There are horror games that arm you with shotguns and magic powers, and then there is Outlast. You have no weapons, no strength, and nowhere to go but forward. Your only tool is a camcorder with a dying battery. This isn't survival horror, it's vulnerability horror. Outlast stripped away every last shred of player defense to create one of the most stressful, terrifying, and brilliant horror experiences of the last decade. This is how the game perfected the art of powerlessness. The foundation of Outlast's terror is a vulnerability mechanic. In traditional horror like Resident Evil, resource management meant scarce ammo and health. In Outlast, the only resource is battery life. You rely entirely on your camcorder's night vision to navigate the darkness, but using it drains the battery, forcing a terrifying risk/reward calculation, light versus safety. This brilliant restriction prevents a player from fighting back, fulfilling the most basic fear, the inability to defend yourself. Your only options are to run, hide, or die. This design choice fundamentally resets the power dynamic, making every inmate a lethal threat, transforming the player from an investigator into a target. Contrast this with the competition. When you have a weapon, your brain focuses on aiming. When you have no weapon, your brain focuses only on survival and invasion. The game forces you to use the environment, not firepower. This makes the smartest object, a locker, a bed, a desk, your only ally in a world designed to kill you. Mount Massive Asylum is less a setting and more of a character, a testament to failed medical ethics. The design is deliberately labyrinthine, designed to confuse and disorient. Similar to Bioshock's Art Deco Decay, Outlast uses environmental storytelling masterfully. You arrive after the catastrophe, piecing together the events not through audio logs alone, but through the visceral horror of the environment. The carnage is everywhere. Bloody bathtubs, walls smeared with feces, and surgical theaters turn into slaughterhouses. This environmental narrative forces the player to constantly confront the moral decay that led to the outbreaks. The isolation of the mountain setting and relentless storms outside heighten the feeling of being trapped, cementing the asylum as a truly hopeless place. We now move into the core threat, the absolute relentless nightmare that defines the gameplay loop, the antagonists of Outlast. They are fundamentally different from traditional video game bosses. They are not subtle masterminds, they are relentless, broken individuals driven by necessity and the brutal, sickening experiments performed upon them. Chris Walker is the purest, most terrifying embodiment of this physical threat. He is not subtle, he is a massive walking wall of raw physical power who instantaneously shatters any remote hope of confrontation. His sheer scale and speed immediately strip away all player urgency, forcing a regression to primal fear. When you encounter him, the game transitions from cautious exploitation to a desperate panic fight or flight instinct, where flight is the only possible option. The genius of the slasher design lies entirely in the AI programming and its effect on player psychology. The intention of every antagonist, from the cannibals to the disfigured doctors, is always unequivocally to catch you. Their patrol routes are clearly randomized. Their hearing is hypersensitive, and critically, they are always faster than your character, miles upshire. This relentless, unending pursuit, a constant threat from multiple directions, creates a perpetual state of agonizing high anxiety. We can compare this to the concept of learned helplessness, the persistent feeling that no matter what action you take, the outcome will be negative. This is the core psychological tool of Outlast design. We must also deeply analyze Doctor Trager. Trager represents the intellectual, calculated evil that engineered the chaos, providing a horrifying contrast to the brute force of Walker. He weaponizes the asylum's surgical tools and medical knowledge, turning procedures into pure torture and artistic expression. His scenes highlight a uniquely sickening comedic horror rooted in a medical malpractice, betrayal, and the violation of the human body. Every encounter with Trager is specially designed not to just scare you, but to make you feel physically violated and contained, as he actively removes your ability to rest. The only escapes are humiliating and slow, squeezing through small windows, crawling through tight vents, or sliding through cracked doors. This constantly painfully reminds the player of their inherent weakness and their absolute lack of options, ensuring that the powerlessness mechanic is forced by every single desperate encounter in the asylum. The moment you are caught, the scene isn't just death, it's a brutal, prolonged display of the enemy's complete dominance. The camcorder is not a gadget, it is the fundamental psychological lens through which the entire experience of Mount Massive is filtered. By forcing the player to view the unspeakable horror through the limited perspective of a journalist's camcorder, Outlast masterfully taps into two deep, profound fears. First, the act of voyeurism. The player is an illicit spectator, bearing witness to the atrocities they should not be. Failed experiments, murder, and total degradation. creating a sickening sense of guilt and complicity. You feel like you're an intruder and a listening spectator. You hold the camera up as a desperate shield, but the camera only exists to record your utter panic and eventual downfall. The player is morally culpable because they continue to film. Second, the limitations of vision and the brilliant visual rhetoric of the camera. The night vision is a critical mechanic, but that distinctive green, grainy filter actively distorts reality, leveraging the human brain's tendency to fill in the blanks with worst-case scenarios. Every shadow flickers, every distant object could be a threat, or just a trick of the light. The limited peripheral vision is a profoundly effective horror trick. You are hyper-focused on the small, illuminated cone of light, while the asylum's vast chaos closes in just outside your view, unseen and therefore maximally threatening. The sound design here is not background noise, it is an essential part of the camera's function. The frantic sounds of Miles' heavy panic breathing, the camera's mechanical whine, and the audible clicking of the battery compartment all contribute to a feeling of total isolated vulnerability. You are surrounded by noise and danger, yet utterly alone in your experience. A classic horror motif perfected through technology. And finally, the terrifying loss of function, the battery death. When the power drains, the absolute immediate darkness that instantly envelops the screen is arguably the game's biggest and most effective jump scare. It's the stark, sudden realization of the fear of the unknown, a primal terror that is inescapable. This mechanic strips away the player's primary tool for processing reality, leaving them reliant only on sound and pure, unadulterated panic in the complete blackness. The black screen forces the player's mind to conjure its own worst monster. Outlast didn't just scare a generation, it fundamentally revolutionized a subgenre, a cinematic that vanished and survived style, defining a new brutal era of horror design that quickly influenced major titles from Amnesia: The Dark Descent to the masterful survival mechanics of Alien: Isolation. Its most profound and enduring legacy lies in indefinitely proving that powerlessness is more a potent and sustainable source of terror than firepower. It delivered a stark, unforgettable lesson to the entire gaming industry, forcing the player to rely solely on invasion, environmental exploitation, and their own frayed nerves and a guaranteed path to high, sustained anxiety, and deep viewer attention. The genius combination of the persuasive sound design, the tight oppressive level structure, and the constant scarcity that all work together to maintain a relentless and calculated assault on the player's senses. The game masterfully blends psychological unease with a truly visceral, shocking terror. By taking away every conventional weapon, Outlast stripped the horror experience down to its absolute essentials, fear of flight and survival, and in doing so, it created a pure, brutal masterpiece of modern horror game design, and that ultimately is why it remains the purest definition of terror and a cornerstone of modern game studies. Alright guys, well, if you enjoyed this video, let me know down in the comments below. If y'all want more of these types of videos, I'll work harder, and subscribe, like the video for more. Yeah, I'll see y'all.